It's really crazy the way that marketing has changed from when I was a kid to now with Facebook and Instagram, and you don't necessarily have to even be paying for it. You can do it all for free. There's so many ways to connect and so many opportunities, and it's really exciting, but maybe that's because I'm in marketing.
The Growing the Future podcast is brought to you by Eberhardt Ag Solutions. Join us as we talk to top entrepreneurs in the agricultural space about their methods of obtaining success in their endeavors. And now, your host, Dan Eberhardt.
I'm really excited to have somebody special here on the line today on the Growing the Future podcast who's all the way across the ocean. And just for perspective, it's 4:00 here in Manitoba, Canada on a Friday, ending the week. It was an amazing week, but it's Saturday where our guest is Saturday morning. She's got a great day ahead of her. And I'm really excited to welcome Em Sparrow to the podcast today. How are you doing there today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's going to be awesome. I wanted to start with, I love your name. It's almost like a superhero's name, like Em Sparrow, like Black Widow. Scarlett Johansson's coming out. Is that a name that your parents gave you, or did you make it up? Is that like your marketing moniker? Or I love the name.
It is my name. I usually went by Emma. I didn't usually go by Em until I started this business. Might have maybe boyfriends nickname me Em, but yeah, sure. I changed it for my business and I just shortened it to the Em Sparrow. It's a little bit more catchy.
It's very catchy. It's very rock and roll. It's so rock and roll. I wondered if you had made it up or if your parents had given it to you, but kudos to your parents, and I hope they get a chance to listen to the show. I'm sure they're really proud of what you're doing, because the reason that we wanted to speak with you, Em, is that you're an international explorer who comes from small town Saskatchewan, that we can all kind of relate from your humble beginnings. But really what I loved about your story was small town Saskatchewan prairie girl growing up on the farm, which we'll dive into your background. But you ended up traveling the world and having a bunch of adventures, and now you're over in Australia, but you're still helping people in the rural agricultural communities kill it online, which we know in COVID is extremely critical. So you've been on a really wild journey.
Yeah. I guess when you look at it that way, it's when you're someone looking from the outside, I guess it looks pretty wild, but it just feels like my life.
We will dive into all those aspects of your journey chronologically as we go, but to share a little perspective for our listener, you and I met being online. I had seen some of your work and I really liked the quality of your work. And then I was looking for somebody to help with some of our social media in terms of the Instagram and drilling down on that. And what had really impressed me was here's this young entrepreneur who so carefully crafted the whole execution of us potentially working together in the proposals and the follow-ups and the plan that you had. I was pretty blown away, I got to say. And marketing is something that I'm really passionate about, and you just really impressed me. And then the other day I saw that you were sharing, as you often do, you shared something personal about your journey with entrepreneurship and how it related to your client. And I find that you do that a lot and you really draw people in, and you also had an offer for people at the end to work with you. And maybe you can offer something at the end of the podcast for anybody who's listening to this that wants help getting their digital game going, right? But that was really the exciting part for me, seeing somebody using their talents like you were, being so professional as a salesperson, seeing the follow-up that you had. It was just awesome working with you. And then when we talked about you being on the show, we covered up all these different aspects, which I think are going to be very informative, entertaining, a gripping narrative as we go. And then there'll be some lessons from your entrepreneurship. Young as you are, I feel like you have an interesting grasp on the entrepreneurship side, which is the focus of the show. So without further ado, let's start drilling down into your journey, Em Sparrow. Take us back to your upbringing in Saskatchewan on the farm.
I grew up in Vanscoy, Saskatchewan. So that's just 15 minutes south of Saskatoon. I grew up on a farm, a grain and cattle operation. My family raised purebred Charolais cattle, and we're quite well known around Canada and the world, which is really cool. I've actually made some connections here in Australia just from people knowing my family name, which is really a privilege. I grew up doing 4-H and riding horses, and I was actually supposed to take over the farm. It was a big part of my life, and when I meet people now and when I connect with other people in agriculture back home again, they're always so surprised at where I ended up because I was supposed to take over everything. So it's really wild.
What was it that you were drawn to on the farm? It was just an immediate connection to what you guys were doing on the farm?
I love the cattle. It's still, if you ask me anything about cattle or Charolais, I can talk your ear off for hours. And it's still a big part of my life. I just loved it from calving season, going out. I was one of those kids that had to wake up at 6 a.m. and bottle feed the baby calves, or get up at 7 a.m. to feed her 4-H steer in the morning. And I've loved every minute of it. And it's pretty crazy to think of where I came from and where I am now, because I wouldn't have imagined it when I was in my teenage years.
So there might be a ranch in your future, but we just don't know. It might be on the other side of the world. It could be a ranch in Australia with tens of thousands of acres in the outback. You never know with your international capacity to travel and adventure.
I don't know if I'd want to farm here in Australia. There's a lot of big snakes.
Oh, really? Well, aren't cowboys conditioned to handle snakes? You got to be, if you want to be a true cowboy, you got to be able to handle like a horse bucking from a snake. We've all seen that on the movies. That's just square one for cowboy. Right?
That doesn't happen in Saskatchewan.
No. If your horse bucks over a garter snake, there's something wrong with your horse.
There's something wrong. But I've ridden a few horses like that.
So what was the key then? We grew up with all kinds of animals on the farm, but I'm not a cattle expert. What was the niche or special thing that you guys did to be known internationally?
Yeah, so we sold Charolais bulls, so Charolais genetics around the world. Our genetics are everywhere from Australia, the US. I think we've sent some to Sweden, Mexico. It's everywhere. As talking to agriculture people, they understand how it works, but it's pretty wild to know that your farming operation is making a difference all over the world. It's very cool. So yeah, we're a big part of the Canadian Charolais Association and quite well known.
That's awesome. You must have made some great connections, your family all around the world.
Yeah. It's really paying off. Like, thanks, Dad, for being so great, because I've made a lot of connections that way. I've connected with random people in Australia or the US and be like, yeah, I'm Emma Sparrow. My parents have Charolais. And they're like, oh, really? Did you raise this bull back in the 80s? And I'm like, yeah, that's us.
Really? That memorable. Yeah, so describe to me for the audience too, what is it about the bull that international buyers are looking for? What do they sell for? What's the process? What's underneath the hood there?
Usually when you're selling a bull, like, you'll sell semen rights around the world. We personally don't sell a lot of semen rights in Canada because we like to keep it exclusive. But usually that's how the genetics, I don't know how much your followers know about breeding cattle or breeding animals, but I guess how genetics spread is through embryos and semen. So selling semen around the world is how we spread it. Selling rights in different countries is like, we'll sell semen rights in a bull in America or Australia or Mexico, and then someone has the right to either sell it there in Australia or just use it in their own operation and use it that way.
You're a marketer now. Did you have an opportunity to learn about marketing through any of those ventures with being a global player in the cow semen business?
Definitely. Like, I grew up always listening to my family and how they market their cattle and listening to Dad's. Dad's got his own strategy, even though he might not think of it as a marketing strategy. It's just the way he does business, and listening to the way he does it and the way he runs his own operation has a big part in the way I run mine. for sure.
The journey took an interesting turn shortly after you turned 18. Tell us a little bit about where you hop skipped around the globe then and why. Yeah, I was like, what?
For sure.
I was like, huh? You went where? Why?
Growing up, like I said, I was a big part involved in agriculture. But when I turned 18, I had a big interest in helping people and also traveling. So when I turned 18, 3 days after my 18th birthday, I moved to Ghana, which is a small country on the west coast of Africa. I moved there for 3 months teaching English when I turned 18. And it was a pretty incredible experience with people all over the world. And we had no running water. We washed with a pail, and it was awesome. It was a big step in how the person I've become. It was a big step, as you can imagine, at 18. And my family and my friends thought I was crazy, but it's definitely shaped how far I've come and taken the steps to start Em Sparrow and move to Australia.
What is that like getting off the plane in Ghana, Africa at the age of 3 days past 18?
It was pretty crazy. I remember getting off, and if you've been to like Asia or Africa and you get to the airport and everyone just flocks you, and I'm a tiny 18-year-old blonde girl and everyone is yelling at me. And thank God I was with an organization, so they took care of me. They found me and they grabbed me and took me to the hotel. But I remember they took us to the hotel before they took us to a small village where we were working. And I remember laying up all night thinking, what am I doing? I am so crazy. I have to be here for 3 months. And it worked out to be an amazing trip and such a different experience. And I haven't been anywhere like that in a long time.
You talked about the impact that it had on you. What was the impact of doing that?
Traveling somewhere so different with none of the privileges we have here. No running water, no electricity. Kids that I used to teach, I was there for 3 months and I was teaching a class of kindergartners, and they were in a tiny village, and the school only went up to grade 3. And then once grade 3 was over, I think maybe 2 students a year would make it to another school. But other than that, they would never leave this village. Like they only would farm with their families, and that was it. So it's pretty incredible. I think since I've been there, it's changed. I think they've actually found a bit of money, and someone has sponsored the school and increased the grades, which is really amazing. But when I was there, the kids that graduated, that was it. They were done. They would just stay home with their families, and that was it. So it's pretty different.
What was the most shocking thing about their culture versus our culture?
People are people when you go to those countries. It's a different experience. Living somewhere is a different experience than traveling. And that's what I'm finding. When you live with a family and you take in their cultures, and you get a lot different experience. The things that are different are just what they don't have compared to us. The fact that you didn't have to flush the toilet, you poured a gallon bucket of water down the toilet to make it flush, or when it rained, we would run outside so that we could have a warm shower.
I can't imagine.
It was different.
If the water doesn't work here, it's basically, it's like a code red emergency. Like, what is going on? Like, what just happened to civilization? There's no running water, hot running water. We take it all for granted every day. Like, it works every day, all the time, everywhere. And the fact, like, they have to carry it. It's most things that on TV are about different cultures is not necessarily true, but the fact that women carry water on their heads to bring it to their homes, it happens. That's what they do every morning. The women have to go and they have to carry the pails of water. And where we live, the family we lived with were probably more wealthy than where I was teaching, so they didn't have to carry it as far. But yeah, it's still pretty cool. Were you able to make an impact? Were you able to teach them some English? Do you think it had a good purpose going over there?
I'm going to be honest. I have mixed feelings about teaching and doing volunteer work in foreign countries, you have to be very careful with who you select with. The main part, I think, that I was making a difference is my money. Going over there was, I think, the big difference. But working with the kids, and I guess they have a positive influence, someone different coming in, and hopefully I made somewhat of a difference. If I went back and did something like that, it would be like for a year or a couple of years, definitely.
How did you get from this crazy adventure in Africa to doing what you're doing in Australia?
I went to Ghana for 3 months, and then I actually went to Europe for a month, but that's a whole nother story. But then I went to Australia the following year, and I actually went to go combining. I was still very involved in agriculture. Before that, I had actually applied for University of Saskatchewan Agriculture Business School, and I ended up just ripping up my acceptance form and going to Australia. I did.
I love that visual. It's just like, no, yeah. It's not going to happen. I'm going to Australia, Mom and Dad. Don't try and stop me. What do your parents say?
I'm sure you're feeling for my parents right now.
Yeah, I'm thinking of my kids. I don't know. On one hand, it's really good if you do crazy things, but just don't do it to me as a parent. Just don't do it to me because it'll break my heart. But hey, good on you for being brave. I love it. So you want to drive a combine in Australia?
Yeah, and this is a really good tip for any young people that are wanting to do this, but you can make really good money driving a combine in Australia.
I might have to come over once you get over this COVID thing. That sounds really therapeutic, actually. Probably not. It's probably really tough, but it's been a while since it's been an operator. But you wanted to be a combine operator, but did you get in a combine over in Australia?
No, that was the initial plan. And then I actually decided to move to Sydney and see what it was like to live in a big city. I liked traveling to big cities. Like I said, I'd been to Europe and I'd been to Rome, and it was one of my favorite cities. And I wanted to try it out. So I moved to Sydney, and I was only supposed to be in Australia for 5 months. And I extended another 5 months after that. And then I went home for a little bit, and then I was like, no. Yeah, I moved back to Australia and started getting involved in the corporate life. I was working in the corporate world, and that's where I got my experience in running a business and marketing and all of that.
You learned to run a business working within another business?
I worked for a finance brokerage in Sydney, and when we first started out, it was just me. And by the time we were done, we had a team of 10 people. He had merged with other companies, and we got quite large. But because I had started with him the entire way, I learned a lot about running a business because I was the person that did everything. I was doing the marketing, the customer relations, everything was under me. Hiring people, running a small team. Yeah.
Well, it's great if you had somebody mentor you. Is there differences doing business in Australia that you had to translate back and forth, or is it all just very common, all the same things?
There's differences doing business in the corporate world compared to small town Saskatchewan. It's very different.
Interesting. Kay, can you give us some examples?
The money was crazy. The Christmas parties, we would go on like a private yacht.
What?
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of private yachts in Saskatchewan. Come on.
No. And have a Christmas party and go from beach to beach in Sydney. Yeah. So there was a lot of money, but also lots of working in finance. It was my first time jumping into a role like that. And there's just so much to learn, and working with large, 20 million deals is ridiculous. There's a lot of pressure.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
Especially for someone who is not very good at numbers. I always joke that I work in finance, but I'm an absolute terrible at math.
Well, if you just got to round it down or up to 20 million, horseshoes and hand grenades, what? Where did that million go? Oh, never mind. That's interesting. That would be a pressure cooker and lots of learning.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and I still am in touch with my old boss. Whenever I need advice on something, I always give him a call. And he started from having $20 in his pocket, moving to Australia. He's from Europe, and now he runs this ridiculously large finance brokerage. So it's pretty crazy.
The Wolf of Wall Street. Love it.
Something
Do they
like
have
that.
a Wall Street? Do they have an equivalent of Wall Street over there? I don't know.
Sydney's quite large. It's the third most expensive city in the world. It's got a lot going for it. We worked just a couple blocks away from the main where all the brokers worked. I knew a few stockbrokers, definitely, from being in the industry.
It sounds really exciting, glamorous, and fun to be a part of, dealing with lots of money and big parties, and I'm sure very exciting career trajectory with all the opportunity in the world. Why is it that you wanted to go out on your own and be a solopreneur?
I always knew I was going to work for myself. When I went to my interview for that job, they said, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" And I said, "I'm going to be working for myself." And I told them from the beginning, eventually that's what I'm going to do. For me, figuring out how I was going to make that happen was a big part of it. And then once that happened, it was really easy for the decision for me. I always knew that I was going to do it. My parents are both entrepreneurs, and so, yeah, it wasn't a hard decision.
Was it tough financially to make that leap? It probably went from a pretty decent income to being feast and famine in the entrepreneurial world. Need that next time.
I got a pretty good bonus.
Very nice. Well done.
A couple weeks before I quit.
Nice. Score.
When I first started out, I probably didn't do it the right way, where I jumped in and I was relying on my credit card. But I guess I always knew I was going to make it work. I'm never motivated. I am probably a lot better at this now, but money never scared me. So the jump financially didn't bother me. I just figured that I would eventually make it work out.
So it was easier than some people might think, but were there challenges along the way that you've experienced?
Definitely. It's easier than what people think it's going to be. It's easier than being stuck in a job that you hate for your whole life. Mm-hmm. It's easier than working for someone if that's not what you're passionate about. But I've had some struggles along the way. I quit my job in July, and then I had to leave Australia because my visa was up. So I had moved to Bali the month after for 3 weeks, just as I was sorting visa issues and I was setting up my business. I was by myself in Bali having an awesome time. I was going out for dinner and speaking to the restaurant owner, and it was a fun night. And then I just felt like I thought someone had slipped something into my Coke. I was freaking out a little. I hadn't had anything to drink. And I managed to get someone to drive me to the doctors, and they laid me down. And they said I had vertigo, and it was caused by stress. I was like, I'm not stressed. I just quit my job. I'm in Bali. I'm having an awesome time. And they're like, no, you're overworking your brain. There's something going on. You need to just stop and relax. That was the first time that I've ever run into issues in my business.
Yeah, and later, I guess you understood that you were maybe having some sort of anxiety attack. What were you feeling? What were you feeling in that moment?
Yeah, so I got someone to drive me, and they laid me down, and it was pretty crazy. I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't remember where I was. They tried to ask me how old I was, and it was really hard for me to remember how old I was, which was crazy. And it was very scary because, first of all, I thought someone had slipped something. And then once they said that, it was the vertigo. After my first episode, it took a while to come down off of that. I was staying in a small hostel in Bali, and it was like I was staying in this little hotel room, and I could barely stand up. I was so dizzy, and I was there by myself. Wow. It was scary. But yeah, I was able to get out of the big city in Bali and take some time to relax, and I pushed my business that I had newly started to the side and spent some time for me, and I had gotten it under control.
Good. So have you been making progress in that area? Has it been a repeat thing? Where are you now with that?
Yeah, so I had somewhat gotten over it by then. So that was my first episode. And then last year, we did some traveling overseas and we went through Southeast Asia, and we stopped in Bali to get back to work and get going again. And I was pushing crazy hours. I was trying to get caught up and get my business running again. And I was working 12-hour days, and then it hit me and I just completely blacked out and was having these episodes and they weren't getting better. So we actually flew back to Australia. I think it was a week before COVID. So it actually worked out really well because I wouldn't have been able to get back in the country if this hadn't happened. So we got back in and I did all the MRIs, I did all the blood tests, and the doctor came back to me and said, "No, you're depressed." And I'm like, "I'm not depressed. I'm fine." But yeah, I've taken a lot of time to de-stress, work on my breathing, as my physio likes to tell me that's a problem as well, and take the time away. Because before this happened, I grew up, my dad's a farmer and my parents are very traditional, and we don't talk about this stuff. We don't talk about mental health, and I never had problems before. It was never a thing. My mental health was great. I'm always happy. And then this hit, and I'm like, how is this connected? But it is. Stress is such an underlying thing that you don't realize until it starts to affect your health.
Absolutely. So you said you were working on some breathing. What were you doing there? I thought it was pretty interesting. I was like, okay, but I love that stuff. What are you doing with your breathing? What was he making you aware of? And is it working for you?
Yeah. So I was never into I don't know. I used to think this was all very like woohoo, like, I don't know, not my thing. Mm-hmm. But I've had a lot of people, when I used to go to a personal trainer, they used to say the same thing. When I go to yoga classes, they say the same, that I quit breathing. I hold my breath when I'm thinking or if I'm stressed, and I'm breathing through my chest and not through, you're supposed to breathe through your stomach. And so my physio is teaching me to breathe properly. And the reason is because breathing properly just helps you relax and de-stress. And I'm always hunched up, and it's starting to play a role. And I'm quite young, and I have a lot of back issues. I'm built like 100-year-old woman.
Like, no, this is not good. You got to get control.
My physios were trying to reverse that, and breathing is a big part of it. It's pretty crazy.
I'm working on it right now as you're talking. I'm trying to loosen up and breathe from the belly, and no, it's all connected. It's all connected. Good for you, and hopefully that's helping. So I think this is a really fascinating area because it's just something that, hey, I've been in ag for a couple decades now, and we're just starting to talk about this, and everybody's starting to talk about it because the amount of pressure on farmers today, everybody, but especially I think in the agricultural community, it's a lonely occupation. There's a culture of isolationism or being that independent, rugged entrepreneur type. And people are starting to talk about it, but some of these things, the crazy part is some of these things happen to people, and it's happened to me, but you don't even know what it is or how to address it. And it's something left field, like you say. What would you say to someone who's maybe had these issues and they don't know how to address it or talk to anybody about it? What would you say to someone who's going through this?
Getting the help you need. It took me a while to admit that I need to see a physio and work on these things. But also, when you're going to source out that help, I feel like it takes a while to find the right person. So once you've decided to make that step, and I know it's quite hard in the agriculture industry, I've watched family members or friends that have had health problems related to stress, and they just live with it and go on. But I think you need to make that decision to get help. And then once you do, it took me quite a few doctors before I found someone that actually had that care factor about me and spent the time and knew what they were doing to provide the help that I needed and not give me a pill because I'm depressed, which is important, which there's sometimes it's important, but I hadn't had that support that I needed first before I was given drugs to fix it, if that makes sense.
You had tried some drugs, but you didn't think that was a good fit for yourself. Not saying that applies to anybody else's situation, obviously.
No.
Consult your doctor.
Yes.
But for you.
For me, the first thing, once I had done the MRI and the blood test, the first thing the doctor had given me was, here's an antidepressant, take it for 2 weeks and see how you feel. I took it for 1 day and I had that vertigo, which was the reason I was taking it. And the drug made me feel like I was on vertigo. Like, this is not for me. So I stopped taking the drugs and I just worked on other things like meditation and yoga. And then I consulted. I've been looking for a while, but I found a physio that can work on my body, but also other things as well, like my breathing.
That's my sister's practice. And it's very interesting how everything's connected with the muscles, as you say, like your back muscles and your breathing and your mental state. So yeah, we just want to encourage anybody out there who's having those feelings or doesn't know what's going on or how to address it, get some help. And one of the things that's really encouraging here is we literally see more and more resources being put towards this all the time, not just for people to share their stories, but to be able to have some outlets to figure out how to address it. These anxiety attacks can cripple people, and I really appreciate you sharing that story, because I know every time this kind of thing goes out into the universe, there's people listening to it that can just relate on some level. I think we've all felt like that, and you sharing that, it means a lot. And I think you're really brave for sharing that. So thank you.
Australia has some really great resources now. After the drought that they were having, there's lots of, after such bad conditions for a long time, there were a lot of farmers that were having a really hard time, and especially with mental health. So there's lots of resources, but I don't know if that's the same in Canada.
I know that there's people stepping up and, trying to link the, hey, let's talk about it, to, hey, there's actually this path that you can take. There's companies investing in resources, and every conference that you go to, on social media, like in the newspapers, there's a lot of focus on it. I'm really proud of our community for progressing in such a way. When I was growing up, I had some anxiety attacks in high school, and I didn't even know what they were. And it honestly affected so many choices in my life going forward that it's hard to look back and say, damn, I didn't deal with that. It affected so many things that I did. And I've overcome it now, largely. Still have different feelings on the spectrum, but nothing like that. If you haven't experienced that, what you went through, it's not a choice. It's not, oh, I'm feeling down. You are helpless in the grips of it. You don't have control of your body. It has control of you. And it would be doubly scary. Just think about Bali. It's so exotic. I can't even imagine what Bali, if you haven't traveled abroad, Bali's got to seem as exotic as a place as you could possibly put a pin in on the map. Hey, let's go to Bali.
It's probably one of, even though every time I go, I seem to get vertigo, which isn't their fault. It's probably one of my favorite countries, or
maybe
islands.
Something to do with
the
magnetic poles. Something like the magnetic field in Bali is just not right for you. I can only imagine how beautiful it is. And you said Australia is beautiful too. It's Saturday there, and you're going to hit the trail. And you said you look at the waterfalls and kangaroos and stuff. You're describing it here. And I don't know if you're eating coconuts or what's going on over there in Australia.
Where I am, I'm on the East Coast. I'm an hour and a half north of Sydney now, in a more regional town. We went on a hike last weekend, about 30 minutes away. You walk down to this beach and the kangaroos are just hanging out there.
That's wild.
I've been on Australia for 6 years and I've never seen anything like it. It was pretty cool. And Australia's got, like Canada, I'm hoping to make it back. I was supposed to be home this summer before COVID happened, but the landscape is just so unique. And Australia and Canada, both their landscapes are just absolutely incredible. It's one of my favorite things to get out and explore. Yeah.
When I started talking to you, I didn't even realize you're actually in Australia. I'm like, wow, this person is like totally confident. We can do business and interact remotely. But you more or less got stuck in Australia because of COVID. It was a pretty serious lockdown. You guys are still locked down. Is that not true?
Things are okay. We're down in Victoria. They're still locked down. Here it's I don't even notice. I think there's limitations on groups, but it's okay. Yeah, we got stuck. We were supposed to come home to Canada this summer. I was supposed to be home for 2 to 3 months to visit some clients, but we're here now, and we say stuck. It's a beautiful place to get stuck. It doesn't feel like I'm stuck here. It's not an issue, but
trapped.
Yeah, working. But yeah, working remotely, I would say that 80% of my clients are still Canadian. And I talked about this with a client the other day. It's really incredible with the internet, and everyone's starting to realize this with COVID because everyone has to be on a Zoom meeting. But it's really easy to work remotely with other people, and you have so much more opportunity to work with someone who's skilled exactly to what you need instead of just going to someone down the road because they're the closest one there. So there's so much opportunity with the internet. And yeah, most of the people I work with are in Canada.
I love that. So you've had this crazy journey. You ended up in Australia. Obviously, it's by choice, but at some point, it's been a little bit limited here with COVID. Let's be real. But now you're helping people in agriculture, which is culturally a really specific thing. If you're not from Western Canadian agriculture, it's probably hard to inject yourself as a voice in marketing to Western Canadian agriculture. So tell us a little bit about building the business that you did, what you're doing, and how you're helping clients back home here.
I always was connected to rural and agriculture businesses because that's, like I said, where I grew up. So when I jumped into the field that I do, which is web design and branding for my clients, it was always a given that I was going to work with these people. And I see the disconnect. I see that people either have two options when they live in a rural or regional area, and they either, one, have to go to someone locally because it's easy, and the designs and strategies aren't quite there yet. Sometimes I find that there's not as much talent when you go to some of the smaller agencies, or they have to go to the big city and they feel like they're forgotten. They've been there, and when they go to a big city, no one really understands them. So I found that gap, and the people that I work with really appreciate that I have experience in knowing where they come from. I understand when someone says they're from small town, I don't know, Chaplin. I know where that is. Right. In Saskatchewan, I know where that is, and I understand the community and how it works, but I'm still applying the strategies and the design experience that I have from living in a city, and I work with a team that also has that experience, but they still understand rural businesses, and they have me to work with as well.
I was really impressed with your approach, and what I really liked was you weren't just putting out marketing per se as marketing for the sake of marketing. You were really emphasizing to me like, hey, we have to have a plan here for conversion. There has to be results oriented. Tell me a little bit about how you're helping these specific clients achieve their goals and make it actionable, actually get eyeballs or people in the door or generate revenue.
When I work with someone, we look at the overall game plan. Since I've worked with you, I used to do a lot of social media coaching, and I actually have moved away from that for the time being. I'm just doing websites and branding for my clients. And when I'm building a website for a client, I'm looking at the overall strategy behind it. When a client has gotten those first set of eyes, whether that's from social media or showing up at a conference or a flyer, how are we going to get your customer from seeing you to trusting you to buying from you? So we have a look at that entire sales process, which I feel like in rural and agriculture businesses, we're not spending the time. We're just thinking, put it up and they'll come. And it doesn't always work like that. We need to look at the numbers. We need to look at everything else and then put a strategy or a plan in place to get them there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really great. So do you have some success stories that you could share with some of your clients that you took them from point A to point B and how you got them there?
Yeah, I guess one really exciting project I worked on this summer, I worked with a butcher in Saskatchewan, and we've created him a really amazing website. So he already had a lot of success, and he had built website in Wix before, and lots of my clients do that. And I totally understand when you're starting your business, the first thing you do is you build a website in Wix, throw it up there, and it's good for the first year. But lots of people come back and they realize that they need a little bit more to that. So with Devin, we built him a website that is similar to an e-commerce store, but because he wants a bit more customer interaction, we have built him like an order form, and his customers have taken a real liking to that. And I think he's definitely seen an increase in orders and really loving the new design. So I'm really excited about that.
This
project.
is cool. Can you share the website? I'm a carnivore. I'm beef right now. It's 5:00 in Manitoba.
Yeah.
It was like a steak.
I don't think he delivers in Manitoba yet.
Hey,
I have another client,
though. That is discriminatory. We need to have like right across borders. I don't want to be discriminated because I'm just from Manitoba. You got to send me the beef still. Come on.
Yeah.
What's the website here?
It's ranchcountrymeats.com.
That sounds so good. I want some.
Yeah, Devin is really amazing. Him and his team, he just started that business, I think 10 years ago. He just had a dream of starting a butcher, and yeah, he's done an amazing job.
Look at them. He's cutting the meat there. Oh man, look at that slice. So you can order beef online. You've got a bit of an e-commerce element here.
Yeah. So I find a lot of, especially, so there's been a big push since COVID for producers and lots of farm agriculture operations, but also butchers to go online. Mm-hmm. And they want to be online, but they don't want customers to just be able to order directly with payment, because sometimes products are subject to availability. Some people don't want the hassle of managing products, or they just want to have that customer interaction. They want to get on the phone. So with websites like that, we set up two options for the customer. They can either call directly, or they can fill out this order form, and then his staff will call them directly and place the order. Yeah.
This must be near and dear to your heart, given your history of 4-H and cattle and being on the ranch. This be right up your alley.
Yeah. It was a really fun project, and I've had there's a few in the works that are very similar. I'm really excited about, and it's really cool. I've seen a lot of commercial cattlemen that before this, they just raised beef and they sold it directly to the packers, and that was it. They didn't need any marketing. And I've had a few of them come to me and say, hey, we want to go online. We want to sell directly to the consumer. What does this look like? And it's really exciting because there's a lot more, at least in the prairie provinces now. And actually, I've had a client in Ontario as well, where you're having a closer connection to the consumer instead of the meat going through all the processes and then the consumer buying from the grocery store.
What is the most common thing that you find that you have to fix first when people come to you with marketing pain points? Is there a common theme?
I wouldn't say necessarily fix. I would say having a better idea of, everyone has a sales process, everyone has a sales funnel, but just understanding the way it works and then making those little tweaks can really make a difference in the way that you're marketing yourself. And every time I say sales funnel, everyone gets a little freaked out because they think it's something techie. But it's not. It's just looking at how people are finding you, and then that process from building the trust factor when they're making the decision. How are you helping people make that decision? And then once they take action, what are the next steps?
Sales funnel before and after COVID was, I think, two different things. It's like before, a sales funnel, that's a big, let's like those in California. And now it's COVID. If you don't have a digital sales funnel or some way to the market, ouch, the world has changed so quickly. Have you pivoted in your marketing? Are you seeing businesses pivoting because of that? You have to help them in different ways now, or it's better for the cause?
With COVID, I'm going to be honest, the only thing I've seen is opportunity for the agriculture industry for people that are looking to purchase directly with the consumer and go online. I haven't seen people that are coming to me aren't coming to me because they're losing money. They're coming to me because they're doing really well and they need to move that next step and they're ready for that next step. And there's been a lot of opportunity in COVID, and this has been happening before COVID, but with the internet and social media, there's so many different ways to market that is so much easier. I think about, my mom's going to get mad at me for saying this, but she used to sell dog food. We used to kill like sheep and chickens, and we would go every weekend to the dog shows in Saskatoon so that she could sell this meat in a bag. And she was like selling off Kijiji, and she would go to the dog shows. And it's really crazy the way that marketing has changed from when I was a kid to now with Facebook and Instagram. And you don't necessarily have to even be paying for it. You can do it all for free. There's so many ways to connect and so many opportunities. And it's really exciting, but maybe that's because I'm in marketing.
It sounds like it's time to fire up the dog food business again here. Maybe your mom will be like, oh yeah, I used to sell dog food. I should do that and hire Emma to market it. And it'll be like, I'll just do it all online. That sounds really good. That must have been a hit.
She's way past that one. She's good. Sounds like a cool business idea though. So you said you have a bit of a team, but walk me through a little bit of how you do your work and how you balance and to find time off and do everything that you do as a solopreneur. I've always worked with a branding designer. When I first started out, I was going to do everything. I was going to do a website. I was going to do branding. I was going to do social media. And I figured out I wasn't very good at branding. So I hired a branding designer. She's from Perth, Australia, and she's really amazing. And she is from a rural background, but she lives in the city. And so she has a great understanding. So I've always worked with her. And before that, I used to do social media as well. But I recently started working with a business coach. And she said the fastest way to 6 figures is finding one thing that you're an expert at and focusing on that. So that's my thing now.
That's great advice. Great advice.
Yeah, because if you're focused on everything else, people want an expert. They don't want someone who's good at everything. So I'm an expert in website design and the sales process and funnel. That's my thing. And social media I've put on the back burner for now, even though I still provide a lot of advice on my platform with social media because I do like to talk about it. As well as I've hired a developer in India to help me. She lives in a small town in India. She had to move out of the city because of COVID. She lives with her parents. I can hear when we're having our Zoom meeting, she shuts the door, but all the kids are running around outside. So, yeah.
Of the internet, eh? Anything goes on Zoom now in the COVID era. Barking dogs, compressors, gunshots, crying babies, sirens. Oh, no. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
Don't worry.
It's a new way of doing business. So I've been curious this whole chat. Oh, man, just getting started. So much talent. I'm so impressed with you. I love what you're doing. What are you trying to really build, or what's your big why now, or where are you taking things now, Em?
You'll see from my platform if you follow me on social media, but I like to help not just my clients, but anyone who follows me, providing advice around marketing online, because I know it's very new. It's new not just for businesses in the city, but especially for rural businesses and agriculture businesses. So I use my platform to share a bit about how to, improve your marketing and using the free sources of the internet to do it. And then also helping my clients as well. So building them something that's long lasting. A website's an investment, and it's a one-time investment that is going to last you for 5 to 10 years and is going to make a huge difference in your business. So setting it up properly is really important, and setting up your sales process properly to reflect your website is all very important. So it's something I'm obviously really passionate about and I love doing. And for anyone that's not ready to take that step, I have my free platform as well. And I have a lot of conversations on my social media, my email marketing. And if anyone wants to download my free stuff on my website, it's there as well.
Oh man, you're amazing. You know what? And I just talking with you again, I was just so impressed with you. And I do think we got to find a way to work together. And I love that you're specializing, because one thing we learned in Strategic Coach that keeps coming back to me over and over is the narrower your niche, the wider your audience, the better that you do that one specific thing, because it's a problem that everybody needs. Right now, everybody needs a digital sales funnel that's in any kind of business. And I'm sure we don't always think of it, but there's a lot of farms that could use help with branding and their own website, even though they might not perceive that they're directly trying to sell to anybody that they might influence. It's still branding, and the future is still knowing where our food comes from and just giving our customers what they want, and rolling with the punches. Like when you say that you saw nothing but opportunity in COVID, it's the same way I view sustainability. There's nothing but opportunity here. Let's get on it. And the future is pretty bright. But the one thing that I'm sure is killing the listener, because it's killing me, is you just nowhere in there, when I asked you about the future, did you talk about coming back and ranching and riding horses competitively and doing the Little House on the Prairie? So are you ever going to come back to us, Emma? Or are you just going to stay over there in the big city, the bright lights on the other side of the ocean? Come on, are you gonna come back home or what?
We've talked about it. It's an option. It's really hard and the only thing that's hard about living in Australia is my family is home. And I think I'll especially feel that when I start to have my own family, is not having my family there with me. So that's the only thing. As for the farming and the ranching, every time I come home for Christmas, I always stay a couple extra weeks so I can have cows. I absolutely love it. It's still something I could talk about for hours, but I'm having a lot more of a reach doing what I do now. And I absolutely love that I'm still working. I still work with so many cattle producers and agronomists and other agriculture related businesses. And I'm loving the reach that I have this way. Riding horses, it's on my 10-year goal planning. I will buy a horse eventually.
Good for you. And Australia ain't the worst place probably on planet Earth to be trapped.
No, we were doing winter swims before in the ocean. It's gotten a bit cold, but we wake up in the morning and we'll drive to the beach and we'll go for a swim, which I'm learning. I'm a really bad swimmer, especially with waves. So I'm learning to swim as we go, but it's very different from growing up in Saskatchewan, and I hadn't seen the ocean until I was 13, to waking up in the morning and going for a swim before you go to work.
Look at you. You just pegged the theme of this podcast in the last few minutes. Learning to swim in international waters with M. Sparrow. I love it. Mm-hmm. You got a great story, and I'm really proud of you that you took that leap to leave the farm and see the world and get that perspective. We talked about the value of that and everything that you learned, the things you've overcome, and how you're helping people now. And you do great work. If somebody's listening and they're curious about working with you, what would you say to them? And maybe if you have any sort of special offer to reach out to a listener, I'd love if you gave them an opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. To find me, and if anyone just wants some free advice, follow me on Instagram. That's like my thing. I love Instagram. It's at M Sparrow Design. You can find me. I have only 4 more spots left in 2020 for clients. Only 4 more. So Whoa. If anyone is looking if they're just curious, or if they're actually looking to improve their sales process and in turn build a website, please feel free to reach out. I have 4 more spots left, and then I'm booking for 2021.
I love it. You're such a good salesman. I do love a good salesman. Especially someone who's young, not afraid to follow up. Excellent work, because it ain't easy to do sales. And if you ever never been in it, try it. It takes chutzpah. to follow up and to solve your clients' problems. You got to sell yourself, and you're doing a great job of it. So keep up the great work. I'm really proud of you. I think you're going to do great things, and you're doing important work for lots of companies. Encourage anybody who would be interested to reach out to M Sparrow, and all the best. Hopefully you'll get home soon. Do you have any idea when you might set your boots down in Saskatchewan soil?
They're talking about not opening the borders till 2021. Yeah. Maybe next year. If not, like definitely the following year. I'm hoping next year. It just depends on the borders, really. I'm eager to come home, and I'm eager to travel around Canada. I haven't done it properly yet. I haven't been to traveled around Alberta, BC, go camping. Like I'm really excited to get home.
Hopefully you can come home soon and this madness will end shortly and we can all try and resume a normal life. But in the meantime, it's all shaped who we are and what life is like. It's different, but there's upsides in everything. It's just how you see it and the stories that you tell yourself. So thanks for sharing your personal journey and your mental health story. I think that's really powerful, and what you do in your business, you're doing great work, and all the best. I hope you get back home soon. In the meantime, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and having me on your birthday. I feel very special.
You are special. You're very special. And yeah, I think people are really going to enjoy your story. And hopefully some people reach out to you to get some help with building that sales funnel to market.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much.
Have a great Saturday. Enjoy your time off. You said you're going to do something this afternoon. What are you guys going to do?
Maybe go for a swim. I haven't checked the temperature yet. I want to go swimming. I'm itching to go to the beach. It's been really cold here. I just need to get outside. Like we're on the 8th floor of an apartment at the moment until we buy a property. And so it gets very, I just have to get outside.
Exactly.
It's very tight.
Do that. Do that with vigor. Okay, we'll have a great Saturday. Thanks for coming on the show, and we'll see you around the racetrack.
Yeah, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, Emma.
Bye.
Bye now.